Welcome, dear friends. Today, I want to focus my view on the meaning and place of resource geography. This is the module 1 of your syllabus of resource geography. Resource geography is a branch of geography that studies the distribution, the utilization, conservation, and management of natural resources on the Earth's surface. It focuses on how resources are being created, what are the resource creating factors, where they are located, how they are being used by humans, and how they can be used sustainably. In traditional terms, resource geography primarily focused on the physical accessibility of resources, the economic use of resources, as well as the exploitation of resources and the conservation and management strategies of resources, and also the unequal distribution of resources and disparities arising out of this unequal distribution. Therefore, in simpler words, resource geography examines the complex interplay of the relationship between the natural resources, and the human societies. Resource study should include the study of land and soil resources, the study of the water resources, mineral and energy resources, forest and wildlife resources, as well as, in a broader sense, the human and technological resources. Friends, first of all, I want to focus, as you all know, that what is a resource? Everything available in our environment which can be used to satisfy our needs, provided it is technologically accessible, economically feasible, and culturally acceptable, is called a resource. According to Professor Zimmerman, the word resource does not refer to a thing or substance, but to a function which a thing or substance may perform, or to an operation in which it may take part, namely the function or operation of a given end, such as satisfying a want. Therefore, friends, resource have two important properties. One is utility and another is functionability of resources. Now, at the very outset, I will try to focus on what are the features or objectives of resource geography. There are so many features or objectives of resource geography. First of all, is the resource geography is of dynamic in nature. That means, as resource geography studies the resource-man relationship, and as we all know, the relationship between resource and man is always dynamic. It changes with the change in the level of technology, economic needs, and cultural understanding. Therefore, resource geography is always a dynamic nature, always a dynamic science. Next is the utility and functionability driven, that I have already discussed, that a resource is considered only a resource when it has an utility and can satisfy our human needs. A lump of coal, for example, is a resource not because of its physical properties, or not because of its composition, or not because of its scarcity, but it can satisfy certain human needs. Therefore, a lump of coal is a resource. Resources can be classified on various types, like biotic resources, abiotic resources. When resources are found everywhere, like the sunlight or wind energy, etc., it is called, ubiquitous resources. Or there are some resources like iron ore in Jhoria, which can be called as the localized resources. Resources can be renewable such as sunlight, wind, which is available to everyone and which can be replenished if successfully and sustainably it is consumed. Therefore, it is the non-exhaustible resources or flow resources, and also the fund resources like the coal, petroleum, which cannot be regained once it is depleted. So there are so many ways by which resource can be classified, and the resource studies incorporates the classification, the analysis of the classification of the resources also. Another important features or the objective of resource study is spatial distribution. It focuses on the unequal distribution of resources across the Earth's surface, affecting regional development. Next characteristic is the resource appraisal. Resource appraisal involves the assessment, inventory, and the qualitative and quantitative mapping of resources. Next point is the conservation and management. To develop strategies for sustainable development, management and planning, conservation of resources is very important, and to avoid also depletion, the management of resources is very crucial. So resource studies should also incorporate the conservation and management aspects of resources. Another aspect that is incorporated or that is included in resource studies is the regional resource planning, to provide the scientific data-driven approaches for the equitable distribution and optimum utilization of resources for regional development is features, or these are the features or objectives of the resource study or resource geography. Now, friends, I want to highlight one of the crucial dimensions of the resource geography that will be covered throughout your syllabus. That is the growth of resource geography. Whenever we are trying to focus on the growth of resource geography, we find that several phases of development of resource geography has emerged. And in that phases, different approaches with their key focus and several characteristics has been developed in that particular phase. For example, the first phase of resource geography, we can say it is the descriptive phase. And in this descriptive phase, the approach is of, this is the early geographers approach. And the focus is on resource inventory. And the key characteristics was on description and mapping of natural resources. If we go to the second phase, we find the phase is the deterministic phase. In the deterministic phase, nature was considered as an active agent and human beings was considered as an passive agents. It was stated that nature dictates human life. That reflection is also, is also applicable in the study of resource geography. The approach in this phase was on environmental determinism, and the focus is on nature's control. And what are the key characteristics? The key characteristics was that resource was being seen as a determinants of human activities. And the third phase, we find another paradigm shift in resource geography, from determinism to, possibilism. That means from nature's control to human control. Human beings are now being considered as an active agent, and nature's took a back seat. And in this phase, the approach was on possibilism, and the key focus was on human choice, and the key characteristics was a role of technology, skills, and human decision making. As we all know, the famous possibilistic philosopher was Lucien Febvre. What he once told that nature does not drive man along a particular way, but it offers a number of opportunities from among which man is free to select. That means the human choice, human desire, human need, human opportunities came into being in the discussion. And therefore, the key characteristics also reflected the role of technology, the role of skills, the role of human decision making, etc. in that particular phase. The next phase is on regional approach or the regional focus. where the focus is on regional distribution and specialization of resources, wherein the key characteristics were the study of the areal differentiation, the planning and balanced or unbalanced regional development through the resource appraisal. Now, after that phase, we find a quantitative phase. The quantitative phase, the approach was on analytical arena. That means approach was analytical. Focus was on efficiency and analyze. And the key characteristics was on the use of statistics, models, and economic analysis. The next phase of resource geography can be considered as the ecological phase. The ecological phase approach was environmental awareness with a focus on conservation. And the key characteristics was on focus on depletion, pollution, and environmental balance. Next phase is the sustainable phase. The sustainable phase approach was, sustainable development. That is, development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. The focus was on the long-term use. And the key characteristics is the conservation and equitable use for future generations. The next phase of resource geography can be designated as the modern phase. The modern phase is the approach was on technological approach and the focus was on planning and management, wherein the key characteristics reckons to the use of GIS, Geographical Information System, remote sensing, and spatial techniques. And the next phase is the postmodern phase. Postmodern phase approach is, postmodernism, where the focus is on multiple perspectives, local knowledge, diversity, and role of power and culture in shaping knowledge. Key characteristics was on how the society's culture and power structure shape the meaning, control, and use of natural resources. So, friends, there are so many approaches that I have focused on. I have told you just the descriptive phase, the deterministic phase, the possibilistic phase, the regional focus or regional phase, the quantitative phase, the ecological phase, the sustainable phase, and modern phase and postmodern phase. So, resource geography goes through these phases and it develops itself. Okay. Now, my next point, this is the second part of my lecture. The second part of my lecture portrays or chalks out the place of resource geography within the discipline of geography. Resource geography is closely related to physical geography. It is closely associated with human geography, economic geography, regional planning and development, as well as the ecological science and environmental geography. First of all, how the physical geography and resource geography are interlinked, I am going to focus on that matter. Resource geography depends on the physical geography for the study of natural conditions. The landforms, the climate, the soil, the vegetation, geological structure all determine the origin, the quality, and the distribution of resources. For example, the mineral resources are closely related with the geological structure, whereas the climate and soil determine the agricultural productivity. Physical geography provides the natural base for resource geography, and it assesses the resource potential of physical landscapes, as well as it helps in resource planning and resource management, resource classification, and these are the ways by which physical geography and resource geography are closely interlinked. My next point of submission is, what is the position of resource geography in human geography? Professor Zimmerman once said, resources are not, they become. That means resources, it is the humans which is converting the natural elements or the neutral stuffs into resources. It is the human perception which is determining factor or which is a controlling factor of resource use and utilization. So, resources are always dynamic and human dependent. Population size, population distribution, population structure, culture, skills, and technological knowledge all influence the resource use and resource value. Human geography and resource geography are also connected with the intergenerational equity and intragenerational equity of resource distribution. It also focuses on human responsibility in resource use. Now, I am going to focus on how far the place of resource geography in economic geography. Sometimes resource geography is considered as a core component of economic geography. It studies how resources contribute to production, trade, and economic development. The location of industries, transport networks, markets, all depends upon largely on the resource availability. It helps in understanding the regional economic disparities. Insofar as the resource geographical place in environmental geography is concerned, we sometimes find that resource geography sometimes overlaps with the environmental geography, particularly in the study of resource conservation and environmental protection. It studies the resource-environment interaction. It emphasizes the balance between development and environment. It addresses the problems like overexploitation, pollution, and resource depletion. It focuses on the sustainable use to maintain the ecological balance, and it plays a key role in achieving sustainable development. Now, I will focus on the role of resource geography in regional planning and development. Friends, resource geography helps in assessing the resource potential of regions. It guides the governments in resource-based planning and policy making, as well as it supports the balanced regional development and reduces inequalities. In the next section, I will focus on the interdisciplinary nature of resource geography. Interdisciplinary nature of resource geography. That means resource geography and its relation with other disciplines. For example, the resource geography and economics. Economics helps in understanding the value, allocation, and utilization of resources. The concepts of demand and supply of resources, the cost-benefit analysis of resource exploitation, the resource efficiency and productivity, economic growth and development based on resource use. Therefore, we can say economics explains the economic viability and optimum use of resources. Another example is ecology. Ecology provides insights into the ecosystem stability and environmental limits. The carrying capacity of the environment, the biodiversity conservation, the interdependence between resource and ecosystems, all are very much interrelated studies between the resource geography and ecological science. Therefore, ecology ensures that resource use should remain ecologically sustainable. Insofar as the environmental science and resource geography is concerned, environmental science focuses on the impact of resource exploitation. For example, the pollution caused by the mining, industries, and energy use, the environmental impact assessment, the environmental impact statement, the environmental management plan, environmental audit, environmental ethics, climate change and resource depletion. So, it supports that environment-friendly resource management. Sociology and resource geography. Sociology explains the social dimensions of resources, the social inequality in resource access, the role of culture and tradition in resource use, and the community participation in conservation. It also highlights the social justice and equity in resource distribution. Now, political science and resource geography. Political science examines the power, governance, and control over resources, resource ownership and state politics, the international resource disputes such as water, oil, and minerals, the geopolitics of energy resources. Therefore, the resource conflicts, resource cooperations, all are, included within the spectrum of the political science and the discourse of resource geography. So far as history and resource geography is concerned, we find that history provides the knowledge of past resource use and management. That is, historical patterns of resource exploitation, role of resources in the rise and fall of civilizations, colonial resource extraction. So therefore, we can say that it helps in learning from past mistakes and successes. Technology or engineering science and resource geography. See, technology transforms natural elements into usable resources. The mining and extraction technologies, the renewable energy technologies, the GIS, Geographical Information System, and remote sensing for resource mapping. Therefore, technology expands the resource base and efficiency. Friends, law and resource geography is also closely interlinked. Law regulates the ownership, the use, the conservation of resources. That is, environmental laws and regulations, forest and wildlife protection acts, international treaties on the oceans and climates. Therefore, it ensures the legal and ethical resource use. Another important dimension of resource geography is its close relation with the demography. Demography explains the population resource regions or the population resource relationships. And on the basis of this, we can demarcate the world into various kinds of population resource regions. The impact of population pressure or the population explosion on resources, the impact of underpopulation on resources, the population policies and sustainability. Therefore, we can say demography helps in balancing the population growth and resource availability. These are the, the interdisciplinary nature of the resource geography. Now, in the next section, there are three parts that I want to focus. Friends, there are so many challenges of resource geography, that is, the subject matter of resource geography also. The first one is the unequal distribution of resources. Resources are unevenly distributed across regions, and therefore it creates regional imbalances and economic inequality. It leads to dependence and conflicts among the regions. Another important challenge is the population pressure. The rapid population growth that increases the resource demand. It causes a stress on the land resources, water resources, and energy resources. And it leads to unsustainable consumption patterns also. Another important challenge is climate change. It affects the availability of water, agriculture, and energy, increases the frequency of extreme events, and creates uncertainty in resource planning. Next challenge is the over-exploitation of resources. Excessive use of land, water, minerals, and forests results to the depletion of the non-renewable resources, and it threatens the long-term availability and resource security for future use. Environmental degradation is another challenge. That is deforestation, soil erosion, desertification, pollution of water, land, air, loss of biodiversity, ecological imbalance, all are the phenomena that is the modern day challenges of resource geography. The resource conflicts and political issues are another important challenges, such as the disputes over the ownership and control of resources, international conflicts over water, minerals, and energy resources, and the political instability affecting the resource management. And poor resource management and planning is another challenge. That is, inadequate policies, inadequate governance, lack of scientific data and planning, weak implementation of conservation measures, all are very much handicaps to the, sustainable resource development. Now, in the next session, I will focus on the future scope of resource geography. First, for future scope of resource geography is the sustainable resource management. Friends, the growing focus on long-term and balanced use of resources, the integration of the conservation with developmental planning, and ensuring resource security for future generations are the need of the hour. The second focus should be on the promotion of renewable and green resources, expansion of the solar, wind, hydropower, and bioenergy, transition from the fossil fuels to the clean energy, supports for low carbon and green economics. The third future scope is the advanced use of technology, greater application of the remote sensing, GIS, and artificial intelligence, real-time monitoring of resources, and improved accuracy in resource mapping and assessment. Next one is the climate change adaptation and mitigation. That is, the study of climate resilient resource use, the sustainable water, land, and energy management, the reducing vulnerability of resource dependent communities. The next future scope of resource geography is the integrated regional planning. That means a holistic planning of the land, water, and energy resources is the need of the hour, so that the regional inequalities can be reduced and inclusive and balanced development can be achieved. Another important is the policy making and governance. That is another area of future scope. That is stronger role in evidence-based policy formulation, resource management at the local level, national level, and global levels, and the community participation in decision making in the resource use is of vital importance. Global and geopolitical relevance is the area that we should focus on. Managing the transboundary resources like the rivers and oceans, assessing the global resource conflicts, and supporting international cooperation. And resource conservation and environmental protection is another pressing area. That is the biodiversity conservation, the focus on ecosystem-based resource management, and strengthening environmental sustainability are the need of the hour. So far, I have discussed the meaning and place of resource geography within the discipline of geography. All in your syllabus of 50 module syllabus, you will find these topics later on, and you will find expert opinions on this topic later on. Now, I am at the end of my lecture. That is the concluding part of my lecture. Resource geography is a very vital and dynamic branch of geography that provides a comprehensive understanding of the relationship between the natural systems and human needs. It examines how resources originate in a natural environment, how they are spatially distributed, and how humans perceive, use, utilize, and manage them. By focusing on both the physical availability of resources and the socio-economic factors influencing their use, resource geography highlights the interactive and interdependent nature of the humans and the environment. The central position of resource geography within the discipline of geography reflects its integrative role in linking the physical geography such as climate, soil, landforms, water, and minerals with the human and economic geography such as production, technology, consumption, and development. At the same time, it closely aligns with environmental geography by addressing the issues of conservation, ecological balance, and sustainable resource management. Thus, resource geography acts as a bridge between nature and society, unifying diverse geological perspectives into a coherent analytical framework. Resource geography is particularly significant for the developing countries like India, where uneven resource distribution, population pressure, environmental degradation, and developmental challenges coexist. Through regional planning, resource inventory, conservation strategies, and policy support, resource geography contributes to balanced regional development and inclusive growth. In this context, the discipline is indispensable for achieving sustainable, resilient, and equitable development, making it not only academically relevant but also socially and economically essential in the modern era. Thank you so much.